most people today have missed a very important verse in the Old Testament that proves that the majority people of Israel were to have a new homeland, that it was not to be in Palestine or the Holy Land. The majority of Israel was to have a new homeland, and it is indeed prophesied in God's word. Turn to 2 Kings chapter 7. And it came to pass, when the king sat in his house, and the Lord had given him rest round about from all his enemies, that the king said unto Nathan the prophet, See now, I dwell in a house of cedar, but the ark of God dwells within curtains. And you can read on what David says here, and then how Nathan was told to come back to David with these words. Notice especially, beginning in verse 8, Now therefore, so shall you say unto my servant David. And then look down into verse 10. Moreover, I will appoint a place for my people Israel. I will, future tense, I will appoint a place for my people Israel, and will plant them. Now they were already in the Holy Land, so why is God now saying through Nathan to David that God will in the future, will plant his people, and will plant them, that they shall dwell in a place of their own, and move no more. Neither shall the children of wickedness afflict them any more as beforetime. It is a future tense that the majority of Israel was to be planted in a new place from which they would not move. Of course, during man's age, we're not talking here about the age to come. We're talking about man's age, that they would not move. Now, let's look at the international version, and looking at that verse 10. And I will provide a place for my people Israel, and will plant them, so that they can have a home of their own, and no longer be disturbed. Wicked people will not oppress them any more, as they did at the beginning. There it is in the New International Version. Let's look at the Amplified Bible. The Amplified Bible, 2 Kings verse 10. And I will appoint a place for my people Israel, and will plant them, that they may dwell in a place of their own, and be moved no more. And wicked men shall afflict them no more as aforetime. That's the Amplified Version. Now we can also look at the Jerusalem Bible and this verse. I will provide a place for my people Israel, and I will plant them there, and they will dwell in that place and never be disturbed again. Nor shall the wicked continue to oppress them as they did in the days when I appointed judges over my people Israel. So they were going to be appointed a new place where the wicked would no longer be able to afflict them. Now, let us go to the Interlinear Bible by Green, a Hebrew and Greek scholar. And in his Interlinear, 2 Samuel 7 and verse 10 or so, this is how he translates it from the Hebrew. And I have been with you in all places in which you have gone, and have cut off all your enemies before you, and have made for you a name great, like the name of the great men who dwell on earth. And I will appoint a place for you, for my people, for Israel, and I will plant them, and they will live in their place, and not be made trouble again, and not shall again the sons of evil afflict them. So there's the kind of literal translation by the Hebrew and Greek scholar Green in his interlinear, 4-volume interlinear Bible. I do recommend that highly, that you obtain the interlinear by Green, 4 volumes. Israel, the majority then of Israel, was to be planted in a new place. That did take place over many centuries when the house of Israel, the 10-tribe house of Israel, was taken into captivity by the Assyrians. And then eventually the Babylonian Empire rose up and conquered the Assyrian Empire. The Assyrians and the house of Israel moved north up to the Black Sea, moved east into Eastern Europe, finally over into Western Europe. And the house of Israel, the 10 tribes house of Israel, became over centuries of time settled and firmly settled in a new land. They became Norway, Denmark, Finland, Sweden, France, Holland, Belgium. They became the Anglo-Saxon people of British Commonwealth and the United States of America. That was their new land. And they have never moved from those lands, and they will stay there till the end of man's age, until the coming of Jesus Christ. They will stay there, and they will never be removed from there until the very, very end time. They've been there now for centuries, and they have never been conquered by aliens. They have been there for many, many centuries. They were not conquered by the Germans in the First World War. They were not conquered by the Germans, the Italians, and the Japanese in the Second World War. No power has been able to conquer those nations in a permanent way. Yes, I know some of those nations were overrun by the Germans in the Second World War, but that was feeding out the Second World War. That was all within 5 years or so during the Second World War. But those nations still prevailed in the long run, and no other power, the Spanish power, could not do it in the Middle Ages. No power has conquered permanently those nations, and they are still there today as a people, in a sense, set apart from all other nations of the world. And they do, relatively speaking then, live in peace from their enemies. At least they're going to, up until the very end time of this age, and then other prophecies of the books of the Bible come into play. And that's what we're going through in the book of Ezekiel. And so other prophecies at the very end time, the last 42 months of this age, the 1,260 days of Revelation, 42 months of Revelation. When that time comes, it will be a different scenario, because then all of the promises and prophets and all of the things that have to be fulfilled will come to pass, just as Jesus said in Luke chapter 21. Let's go to Luke 21 and see, indeed, that there are many prophecies that will be fulfilled at the very end time. Luke 21 and verse 20. And when you shall see Jerusalem accompanied about by armies, then know that the desolation draws nigh to Jerusalem. Then let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let them which are in the midst of it depart out, and let not them that are in the countries therein enter. Don't get into that land at that particular time when Jerusalem is going to be conquered. Verse 22, for these be the days of vengeance, that all things that are written may be fulfilled. So in those last 42 months of this age, there will be many, many prophecies of the prophetic books of the Bible, including, of course, the great book of Revelation, that will be fulfilled in the last 42 months. But the majority of the people of Israel up until that time have been planted in a new place, as God promised to David through Nathan, that they would be planted and that nobody would conquer them in any kind of a permanent way. And that has taken place, and the vast majority of the people of Israel are dwelling in the nations that I mentioned. Don't forget that book that you can obtain from Amazon, In Search of the Origin of Nations, nearly 500 pages, will give you all of the peoples on earth, where they came from and who their ancient ancestors were. Very well documented, very well studied, very well in detail. Many years it took the author to write that book with much detail and much study. So I do highly recommend that book, In Search of the Origin of Nations. And Israel, indeed, as promised to David, were given a new land and were given freedom from their enemies. We'll pick it up there in Ezekiel 14 next time.